John.
Was there not a time when meat was always linked to or is linked to colon cancer? Is that not the number one thing that people are essentially saying? Like, if you eat steak all the time or red meats, I think it was specifically, you're going to end up with colon cancer. What am I to think of that?
That certainly is something people say. But the evidence is totally against it. That really came from, I believe it was like 2015, the WHO came out with this declaration saying that red meat was a likely carcinogen. So it was class 2 carcinogen, and that processed meat, they classified it as a known carcinogen, specifically with like colon cancer, increasing the risk of colon cancer. And then that showed up in like different documentaries, like vegan documentaries, like What the Health. And that thing was just awful. It took me 4 hours to go through the first hour of it because I was taking notes. And like someone like made me watch, oh, well, what do you think? Oh, this is really compelling. And I was just like, this is bullshit. Yeah. And I was like, every 2 minutes they'd say something just completely egregious. And I just like do the counterpoint, like put in links to studies and things like that. So it took me 4 hours to watch the first hour. Processed meat is a class 1 carcinogen. And that's up there with cigarettes and plutonium. I said this is this word like you're talking to a child to make impress upon them the emotions that you want them to feel. Yeah. And sure, they had that. And they had it listed up there. And it was just like processed meat. And it had like this number next to it. It was like 6. And then it had, smoking. It had this number next to it. It was like 314,000. Yeah. And then it was like plutonium, 6 million. Okay. So that's like the relative risk, right? Yeah. Of like maybe getting cancer. And so like, yeah, so you're feeding your kids, processed meat in the morning. It's like feeding them plutonium plates of cigarettes, they're like pouring like ashtrays on their kids' plate and things like that. According to that, that's like giving them tens of thousands of cigarettes, like 30,000. Right. Cigarettes for breakfast, or hundreds of thousands, a million pieces of meat to equal plutonium. It was just stupid. Right. That came from something in the WHO. The WHO posted this thing out in 2015, and they made this declaration. Okay, so when you're looking at the evidence hierarchy, you look at like umbrella reviews, systematic reviews of high-level randomized controlled trial, of meta-analyses of high-level randomized controlled trials. That's the peak of the pyramid. We don't really have any data that's better than that, right? And so then it goes down the list. At the very bottom is expert opinion. And that's what the WHO declaration is. It said, this is our learned opinion based on the evidence we looked at. That's professional opinion. That is the bottom of the hierarchy. It's the worst form of data, and especially because it's so corruptible. And in fact, that's exactly what happens. So there was a gentleman, he was a researcher, and he was on that panel. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he subsequently came out and said that was the most difficult time in his whole professional career, because he saw them throw out hundreds of high-quality studies that showed absolutely no connection or even correlation between red meat, and especially unprocessed red meat, and any form of cancer or any deleterious health effect. It was just not associated with anything harmful. They threw out hundreds of these things in favor of about 30 that had a very weak at best signal to noise ratio of meat and colon cancer, things like that. But they had these studies, they're epidemiological survey studies. They had, which are just garbage. They're just hot garbage. They're saying, hey, here's a survey. Hey, what did you eat last year? How many times a week did you have fried chicken? Like, what the... What are you talking about? Like, how am I supposed to remember that? Yeah. I've eaten one thing for the better part of a decade. I can't tell you how much of it I've eaten, or like exactly how much of that was beef or whatever. It's just ridiculous to ask that. But also they were including things like pizza and lasagna and sandwiches and those sorts of things as meat, and fast food. Like if you go to fast food, you go to McDonald's, well, that's meat because there's meat in the patty. Okay, so you got this 2-ounce burger patty in there with 3 buns, a bunch of sugary sauces. You got oils, nightshades, deep fried in and trans fats and seed oils, and a sugary drink. It's that meat. Ugh, I shouldn't be eating that fatty meat. Like what are you talking about? Yeah. So those are confounding factors that are going to skew the data in one area or the other. And also there's healthy user bias, right? When you have people that, are trying to be healthy, they're trying to eat whole foods. They're trying to, I'm supposed to eat fruits and vegetables. So you do that. And they're also working out, and they're also not drinking. They're not smoking. They're not staying up late because they're trying to be healthy. Right. And people that are eating a whole bunch of junk food, 90% of the calories that come from this junk food are plant-based calories, plants and sugar. But, they blame that on the meat. And also those people are less healthy. Yeah. So you're saying, you eat more meat because you're eating more fast food, you're eating more pizza, which could have toppings on it that are meat. And these are less healthy people. And so, It's the meat. It's all the meat. So they blame it all on meat. And so even with all those confounding factors, there's only an 18% increased relative risk association between meat consumption, junk food, pizza consumption, and colorectal cancer.
Right.